What happens when the person you've been laughing at turns out to be someone much more important than you ever imagined? This team learned that lesson the hard way. It was just another morning, no different from any other, but little did they know, it would soon spiral into chaos. The sun was shining brightly over the bustling streets of downtown Dubai. People were going about their usual business, hustling through the city, lost in their routines. Amidst this energy walked a man named Elijah. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud. But there was something about his presence that spoke volumes, a quiet dignity that often goes unnoticed. That morning, Elijah had an important delivery to make, one that would take him to one of the most exclusive places in the city. Bel Andreas Fine Dining. Known for its reputation as a high-end restaurant, with food as expensive as the glitz and glamour surrounding it, Elijah was no stranger to these places. But they weren't his usual scene. Still, duty called, and he had a job to do. He parked his truck in the alley behind the restaurant. It was a place he had delivered to countless times before. The large silver doors of the staff-only entrance stood tall, a silent challenge for anyone who didn't belong. Elijah grabbed his invoice clipboard, slid on his gloves, and carefully stacked the boxes of fresh, organic produce and specialty seafood onto his dolly. As he wheeled the load toward the entrance, he heard faint laughter echoing from inside. It wasn't just the usual chatter you'd hear in a restaurant. No, this was different. It was laughter that carried a sting, ridicule mixed with superiority. Elijah let out a small sigh, but shook his head lightly, unfazed. He'd heard it all before. They could laugh, but it didn't matter. He knocked twice on the steel door and waited. When it opened, a young man in a crisp, white chef's jacket stared at him with annoyance, like Elijah was some kind of inconvenience. Behind him, 2 other staff members were peeking out, one of them barely stifling a chuckle, the other rolling their eyes. "Chef, deliveries are supposed to come earlier," the young man snapped, his tone dripping with irritation. "Elijah, I'm right on schedule, sir. Fresh seafood from Gulf Coast Imports, and the organic greens you requested." Elijah calmly responded, holding up the invoice for the chef to see. "Chef, whatever. Just bring it in and don't block the kitchen entrance," the chef muttered, waving him off like he was a nuisance. As Elijah pushed the dolly inside, he noticed more staff turning their heads, glancing at him with expressions ranging from amused to condescending. It wasn't just the words they spoke. It was the way they looked at him. One of them muttered under their breath, barely audible, but still piercing. "Staff member, guess the company sends anyone to places like this." Elijah's hands moved steadily as he unloaded the boxes. His mind was focused on his task, even as their words hung in the air like a bad odor. He didn't flinch. Not yet. He knew something they didn't. He had something to prove. It wasn't just about the delivery. It was about something bigger. Bel Andreas Fine Dining, the place where the staff's pride and arrogance seemed as polished as the marble floors beneath Elijah's feet. The chandeliers above cast a golden glow over everything, and the entire place screamed wealth and exclusivity. But Elijah noticed something that wasn't so gleaming: the staff's attitude. They moved quickly, but with a sense of superiority. There was no pride in their work, only in their perceived position. A woman in a sharp black suit walked past him, without even looking up from her clipboard. She muttered something under her breath. "Woman, make sure you're not blocking the chef's station," she barked as she walked by. "Elijah." "Yes, ma'am." Elijah's voice was polite, firm, but underneath it all there was a growing sense of unease. She barely glanced at him, as if he wasn't even worth her attention. Nearby, 2 waiters folded napkins, whispering amongst themselves. It wasn't hard to figure out what they were talking about. Every now and then, they'd glance over at Elijah, barely hiding their smirks. Waiter 1. "Bet he'll mess something up in 5 minutes." The snicker echoed in Elijah's mind, but he ignored it. He kept moving, focused on the task at hand. Years of experience in this business had taught him not to engage with people like this. They weren't worth his energy, but still, the comments continued to flow. Waiter 2. You'd think someone delivering to a place like this would at least dress better. Elijah glanced down at his uniform. It was clean and pressed, practical for someone hauling boxes all day. But to these people, it wasn't enough. It didn't matter. Elijah wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here to do his job. As he finished unloading the first load and began heading back to his truck, he passed a group of line cooks. They too paused their conversation to look him over. One of them, a tall man with a smirk that practically screamed trouble, leaned over and whispered loud enough for Elijah to hear. Cook. Bet he couldn't even afford to eat here, let alone step through the front door. The other cooks laughed. Elijah's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't respond. It wasn't worth it. He was here to do his job, and he wouldn't let their words distract him. He continued walking, focusing on the task at hand. The laughter from inside grew louder as Elijah walked back to his truck. He could feel their eyes on him like he was a spectacle. It wasn't the first time, but something about today felt different. He wasn't just some delivery man. And as he pushed the dolly back toward the kitchen, the worst was yet to come. Inside, the head chef, Damien, stood inspecting the ingredients Elijah had already delivered. He turned up his nose slightly at the crates of seafood. Damien, is this the best they could send? Elijah paused for a moment. He could feel the insult hanging in the air. But before he could say anything, Damien cut him off. Damien, no. Just drop it off and leave. We've got more important things to focus on. Elijah moved quickly to unload the second set of boxes. But it wasn't just the words that bothered him. It was the lack of respect, the dismissive attitude. Damien spoke loudly, directing his staff with an exaggerated authority, like he needed to prove something. It wasn't just the chef, it was the whole culture of the place. Elijah felt it deeply, the blatant disregard for anyone in a job like his. As he began to stack the empty crates, one of the kitchen staff called out to him. Kitchen staff. Hey, delivery guy, you missed a box. Elijah was confused. He was certain he hadn't missed anything. He walked over to the crate, only to find it was empty. A burst of laughter followed. Kitchen staff. Just messing with you, man. Relax a little. Elijah didn't respond. He placed the empty crate back down and continued his work, but inside, his patience was wearing thin. His job wasn't to be their joke. When the delivery was finally complete, Elijah handed the signed invoice to Damien. The chef didn't even look at him, scrolling his signature across the paper like it was just another chore. Damien! You can go now, Damien said curtly. Elijah turned to leave, but before he could reach the door, one of the waiters muttered under his breath. Waiter. Yeah. Go back to wherever you came from. That was it. Elijah stopped in his tracks. His hand hovered over the door handle, and for a brief moment, the room fell silent. Every eye was on him. He turned slowly, his gaze locking with the waiter's. Elijah. I came here to deliver something you clearly need more of. Respect. The room fell completely silent. Elijah walked out, his calm confidence silencing their mocking laughter. But the real surprise was still waiting for them. It was only a matter of time before they realized who he truly was. Elijah leaned against the side of his truck, taking a moment to breathe. The delivery was finally done, but the weight of the morning lingered. He'd been in similar situations countless times before, but something about today felt different. It wasn't just the usual mockery or the condescending looks. No, today felt like a turning point. Perhaps it was because they had all assumed so much about him, blind to the reality that Elijah was more than what they saw. He glanced at the restaurant's grand facade. The name, Bel Andreas, was etched in elegant gold letters above the entrance. It almost felt surreal. Just a few weeks ago, Elijah had signed the final papers to become the owner of this very restaurant. His quiet, unassuming delivery had been a mask for something much bigger, his growing empire of fine dining establishments. The years of hard work, sacrifice, and grit had led him here. He had started from nothing. Elijah grew up in a small town in Louisiana where opportunities were few and expectations for someone like him were even fewer. His parents worked tirelessly, instilling in him values like hard work and integrity. At just 16, Elijah had started as a dishwasher at a local diner. Over time, he moved up the ranks, learning the ins and outs of the restaurant business, watching the cooks and servers with fascination. He dreamed of something bigger, of owning a place like Bel Andreas. Eventually, Elijah saved enough money to open his first restaurant. It wasn't flashy, but it was his. It was a start. And from there, his vision grew. When the opportunity to buy Bel Andreas came up, Elijah didn't hesitate. He knew it was a risk, but he also knew what this place could become under his leadership. He saw potential, a chance to turn it into more than just an exclusive, high-end establishment. Elijah envisioned a place where everyone felt valued, from the guests to the staff, and even the delivery drivers. But he had decided not to announce his ownership immediately. He wanted to see the culture of the restaurant for himself. He wanted to observe how the staff operated when they didn't know he was watching. And what he saw that morning only confirmed what he suspected. A change was long overdue. Elijah made a few quick notes on his tablet as he sat in his truck. He had scheduled a meeting with the staff for later that afternoon. He had kept the announcement vague, telling the manager to gather everyone at 3 p.m. He wanted to see the reactions firsthand. He thought about Chef Damien and the way he carried himself, quick to judge and dismiss people. He thought about the waiters, the kitchen staff, and the manager who barely acknowledged him. Elijah didn't feel anger toward them. No, what he felt was something deeper. Disappointment. Disappointment in how easily people fell into patterns of prejudice, how assumptions about others were made so easily. By the time Elijah drove away from Bel Andreas, he had made up his mind. The meeting wouldn't just be a casual introduction. It would be a chance to set the tone for what this place was going to stand for moving forward. Respect, humility, equality. Those weren't just buzzwords to Elijah. They were the foundation of everything he believed in. And the staff was about to find out just who Elijah really was and why he was there. At precisely 3 p.m., the staff began to gather in the main dining room of Bel Andreas. Some of them looked curious, others annoyed. Damien leaned against a table with his arms crossed, a look of irritation on his face. He muttered to one of the servers, "Damien, what's this about? We're slammed tonight. Do we really need to sit through some pointless meeting?" The restaurant manager, Greg, stood near the entrance, looking unusually nervous. He'd been told to assemble everyone, but even he didn't know exactly why. All he had been told was that the new owner would be arriving today, and the meeting was mandatory. As the staff settled into their seats, the doors to the dining room opened. Elijah walked in, still dressed in the same uniform he had worn that morning. For a moment, the room was silent. The staff exchanged confused glances, unsure of what to expect. Damien let out a short, derisive laugh and shook his head. "Damien, you've got to be kidding me." Elijah's calm, composed presence was enough to make them uneasy. He stood in the center of the room, meeting their gazes one by one. The tension was thick in the air, and for a moment, no one spoke. Finally, Greg cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Greg, Elijah, what are you doing here? This meeting is for the staff only." Elijah smiled faintly and spoke, his voice steady, yet firm. "Elijah, I know, Greg. That's exactly why I'm here." Damien rolled his eyes, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Damien, if this is about the delivery earlier, can we just move on? We have work to do." Elijah turned his attention toward Damien, his gaze unwavering. "Elijah, you're right, Chef Damien. This meeting is about the delivery, but it's also about so much more than that." Damien raised an eyebrow, but before he could respond, Elijah continued. "Elijah, Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Elijah Reynolds, and as of 3 weeks ago, I'm the new owner of Bel Andreas Fine Dining. The room fell silent. The shock in the air was palpable. Damien's smirk vanished, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. The servers exchanged stunned glances, and Greg's face turned pale. No one could believe it. Elijah wasn't just a delivery driver. He was the owner. Damien. You? The owner? Damien managed to stammer. Elijah. That's right, chef. And before you say anything else, I want you to understand something. This isn't about me flaunting my title or putting anyone in their place. This is about respect. Elijah let the words linger in the room, his tone calm, yet carrying authority. Elijah. I spent the morning observing how this team operates. I saw the way you treated me because you assumed I was just a delivery driver. And I want you to think about what that says. Not about me, but about you. Damien opened his mouth to respond, but quickly shut it. The servers looked down at the floor, avoiding Elijah's gaze. The weight of his words was sinking in. Elijah, you judged me before you even knew who I was. You made assumptions based on how I looked, what I was wearing, and the job I was doing. And that behavior, it doesn't just hurt me. It hurts this restaurant. It hurts the culture we're trying to build here. The room was silent. Elijah continued, his voice firm yet compassionate. Elijah, every person who walks through these doors deserves respect. Whether they're a guest, a staff member, or someone delivering the ingredients that keep this place running. That's the standard I expect from every single one of you. For the first time that day, Elijah saw something different in their expressions. Shame. It wasn't comfortable for them, but it was exactly what they needed to feel. Elijah's tone softened, but his words lost none of their power. Elijah, I didn't start at the top. I've been where you are. I've worked long hours doing the jobs no one notices. I've scrubbed floors, washed dishes, carried boxes, just like I did this morning. And let me tell you, those roles are just as important as any chef or manager in this room. Without them, this place doesn't run. Elijah paused, letting the gravity of his words settle in. The staff remained silent, processing the weight of his journey and the truth behind his message. He continued, his voice resolute. Elijah, here's what's going to happen. Starting today, we're building a new culture, one where every role is respected, where assumptions and judgments have no place. And if anyone thinks they can't be part of that, then this isn't the right team for you. The room was quiet. Some staff members murmured apologies under their breath. Damien spoke up, his voice hesitant. Damien, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. Elijah raised his hand to stop him. Elijah, actions speak louder than words, chef. If you're willing to do better, then prove it. Show me, and show the rest of the team, that you're here to grow. Elijah's tone softened one last time. Elijah, we all have biases. We all make mistakes. But what matters is how we move forward. And I believe this team can be better. He turned to leave, offering one final thought. Elijah, respect costs nothing, but its absence can cost you everything. The staff sat in silence, long after Elijah walked out. His words weighed heavily on them. And for the first time in years, Bel Andreas Fine Dining felt like it might finally live up to its name. This story isn't just about a restaurant. It's about all of us. How often do we make assumptions about someone without knowing their story? How often do we let pride or prejudice cloud our judgment? Let's do better. Whether in our workplaces, communities, or daily interactions. Respect and kindness don't just change lives, they build bridges.